G'day everybody and welcome to Dog Shadow Gaming. As always, I'm Balth and this is the channel where we live to game and game to live. Today we're looking at our second episode in our series for Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. In the first one we did the prologue. We just went through a bit of the prologue, how general things move and how ships go and all that sort of stuff. In this episode I want to go into the multiplayer aspect, which was the other part of the original beta that we're currently in, or that was on when this video comes out. And this is basically it. It allows you to play through the factions. It allows you to play one-on-one against the computer, or you can play ranked 1v1 or 2v2. 1v1 is okay, you'll get into most games. 2v2 is about 50-50. There's a bug that people either they DC or you can't get in the first place. It is loads of fun. I actually prefer ranked 2v2 than I do 1v1. I just think it just adds a lot more when you've got 4 different species all battling it out. And sometimes you get some really good fun fights where you'll have like 2 Imperial and 2 Tyranid and whatever. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy 2v2. But today, for this episode, we're just going to go through probably just briefly the different factions. I've had the game now since 5th of December. I've probably put in that time, I'd say about 30-35 hours into it, I'd say, in the last 4 or 5 days. So I've tried to keep my play, like I haven't nailed down onto one faction. I've played a little bit of everything. So I'm not a master at any of these, and I haven't read absolutely everything on all of them, because I wanted to sort of do that with you guys. So I'll do an episode on each faction, just talking a little bit about the faction and what they're good at and not good at. Or we might do 2 factions an episode, because there's probably not enough. We'll see how we go. I'll try to keep them down to like 30-minute episodes. But let's start with the multiplayer aspect of it. So the first up is the Imperial Navy. So let's go through the Imperial Navy and have a bit of a look at them, and then I'll talk a little bit about my experience with them. By no means am I an expert, but I will try to give some feedback of what I thought of them and where they're at. So the Imperial Navy, let's start with the blog for them. Imperial Navy. The Imperial Navy is the greatest space-going military force of the 31st millennium, and perhaps in the whole of history. Only its need to safeguard the million worlds of the Imperium prevent it from dominating the entire galaxy. The Imperial Navy boasts a vast array of ship classes and a great variety of tonnage, offering balance and versatility to any fleet. Its ships are resilient, move at average speed, and shoot at medium range. So they're definitely not a ranged class. They're pretty slow, to be honest with you. There are slower, but not by much. Now let's go and have a quick look. If you choose Imperium, at the moment I've got 3 of the portraits open. The portraits are bugged. I have actually opened far more, but they're not all showing at the moment. But that's alright. As I said, this is very early beta, so you got to remember that. But it's cool. Some of these portraits look really good, as you can see there. This dude's, he's full on. I don't even know what that is. But that one, I like that one. That's pretty cool. So let's have a look at the subclasses. Now the subclasses are the next part of the multiplayer platform. And these are, I mean, you'll know them if you've played the first one, the Gothic. The Gothic sector has a long suffered attacks from Chaos forces striking from within the Eye of Terror. The sector's renowned Battlefleet has therefore garnered a reputation for combating renegade fleets, all the way up to the arch traitor Abaddon himself. And then we've got Solar. Battlefleet Solar has had a long and tempestuous history, rife with sacrifice in the face of overwhelming odds. It is the last bastion against those who would strike at the cradle of mankind, Holy Terror itself. So this is your Terran sort of fleet. Armageddon. Armageddon has been contested many times, most recently by the Orc warlord Ghazghul Thraka. As such, its captains have garnered favourable expertise on how best to combat the Orc menace, and at least those who survive. Baka. Battlefleet Baka proved pivotal during the First Tyrannic War and the Battle for Macragge. Only through heroism and sacrifice of its captains and Admiral Wrath of the Dominus Astra was the Tyranid menace contained and obliterated. Bastion. The Bastion Fleet are the largest permanent formation of the Imperial Navy outside of the Sol system. Drawn from many scattered sectors, the vessels of Bastion fleets are united in their mission to contain the heretics of the Eye of Terror. Coronos. Yeah, Coronos. I think it's Coronos. Battlefleet Coronos serves as a bulwark against the horrors of the Halo stars, patrolling the star-born reaches between Port Wanda and the Drussus Marches for any sign of incursion against mankind's rightful dominion. So these are the subclasses. Now, what do they do? Now, in some of the races, because it's still beta and they're still working on it, it actually changes what skills you can get or how many skills you can get. It also changes the color scheme of your ships. And at this point, that's about all it does, right? So it's just, for these guys, as you can see, it's not actually changing any of your selected, your skills or your upgrades. So they haven't put the work into the Imperial, but I imagine that it will be coming. For now, it just changes the color scheme. So that's cool. So we'll go through with the Imperial now moving on to selecting your skills. So as you can see here in the next section, you've got skills. Now these are very specific. So if we start from the front here, technical skill, supercharged void shields. Make the ship's shields invulnerable except to disruption bomb. Multiple shield generation by 10 for 10 seconds. So these can be really, really good, and they can be pivotal to winning a battle, to be honest with you. Plasma bomb teleports a bomb to a maximum distance of 10,000 units. The bomb explodes after 10 seconds and deals 200 to 400 damage, ignoring armor, to all ships within a 15,000 unit radius. Auger probe launches a probe to the designated location. The probe moves in a straight line and detects enemy ships within 4,500 unit radius. Once it has reached its destination, it deploys after 10 seconds. The deployed probe detects enemy ships within 9,000 unit radius. If it collides with an enemy ship, it sticks to it and automatically deploys itself. Once activated, it lasts for 120 seconds. So you gotta be really careful with this one, because if it gets into one of your ships, you have no hope of stealthing or ever getting away. And then sometimes you don't care, other times you do. So that can be really, really good. Especially if you're fighting something like the Drukhari or the Corsair or Azrani, because especially the Drukhari, because they're they're stealthy, and we'll get into that later. Disruption bomb. So teleports a bomb to a maximum distance of 10,000 units. The bomb explodes after 10 seconds and nullifies all ships' shields and hollow fields. Shadow fields within a 15 unit radius. Their regeneration as well as their null colorization effects are interrupted for 20 seconds. That basically pulls down all their shields or whatever they have. Some things have shields, some things have null fields, some things have shadow fields. And here's this one here. So stasis bomb. So teleport a bomb to a maximum distance of 13,000 units. The bomb explodes after 15 seconds. The speed of all ships and squadrons projectiles within a 2,500 unit radius is reduced by 90%. Reduced by 90% for 20 seconds. Basically stops you in place for 20 seconds. Which this is awesome. And when used in conjunction with some other things, can be devastating. And used correctly at the right time, when your opponent's already used these thrusters and can't get away from it, wow, I mean, it can do massive damage to a whole fleet. So this is really, really cool. Moving to the next thing that you can do for your ships, select your upgrades. Now these will change depending on, the top ones here change a bit, these change a lot depending on what race you're doing. So we'll read out the Imperial just to start with, but it will change for each race. So, first one, navigation shields. Damage caused by asteroid fields, minefields, and spore fields is nullified. Now you might think that's minor, but that's for all of your ships. So all of your ships can now hide in asteroid fields. You can also, if somebody's chasing you, you can run through an asteroid field, and they're going to take damage going through it. So that's pretty good. It's not too bad. You can hide in asteroid fields too. Improved auger array. The identification range of this ship is increased by 4,500 units. Applies to fleet escort ships and light cruisers. So it's really important. When I first started playing this, I wasn't paying attention. I was thinking, oh, this is just for all ships, but it's actually not. So you got to pay really close attention if you're using these upgrades, because they don't apply to everything. So you've got to make sure that when you set up your fleet, you're using the correct ones that have the correct things. So, I mean, it's only going to work with escort ships and light cruisers in this one. So let's keep moving. Ramming damage is increased by 50%. Now this particular This applies to fleet Imperial Navy ships with spurs. So if you've got any ships that don't have spurs, it's useless as an upgrade. Moving on, auxiliary shield capacitors increases the shield regeneration speed by 25%. Now this is all ships, so very helpful. Orient pattern weaponry. Range is increased by 4,500 units for macro weaponized weapons and by 4,500 units for lancers. Applies to flagship. So this upgrade only applies to your flagship vessel, nothing else. So you have to be very aware of that. It can be like you're only getting that for one ship. Here we go. Short-borne torpedoes. Speed of torpedoes is increased by 50%. Applies to fleet ships with torpedo launchers. Again, only ships with torpedo launchers. So bear that in mind. The ship can use maneuvers while running silent stance without being revealed. Applies to fleets, escort ships, and light carriers. So, and then on and on and on and on, yeah? So it gives you a bit of an idea. Some of these you'll see in all classes, some you won't. Now these don't change any of them, so that's cool. So let's have a bit of a look through them, just as a top one, and then we'll do the Imperials for this first episode. So, Space Marines, Adeptus Astartes, pretty straightforward really. You've got supercharged shields, which we already read. You've got the plasma bomb we already read. You've got auger probe we already read. Disruption bomb we already read, and stasis bomb. So that's pretty much the standard you'll get for most, except for a couple of changes, right? Now these change a little bit. So that's the same. That's the same. Now you've got first company terminators. When performing a lightning strike, the critical assault chance is increased by 45%. Applies to the flagship. Pretty much the same. A little bit different. The ship's weapons damage to enemy shields is raised by 10%. The hull cauterization activation delay of this Necron ship is raised by 10%. And then a company banner. Now the reason these are like this is that the Astartes at the moment, I mean, and honestly, to be fair with you, I feel like they are probably in need of the biggest buff of any of the races. They are by far the weakest of the races, to be fair, or factions, whatever you want to call them. They're very, very much pushed towards being a frontal, sort of an assault. You've got to get in close, and you really want to be boarding, doing a lot of boarding actions. Unfortunately, they're very weak. They're expensive, so you don't get a lot of ships for them, and they're weak. They're very weak. They get blown to pieces well before you get anywhere near being successful enough to do those boarding actions. I mean, you really want to kind of just, you need to be able to duke it out long enough to get enough boarding actions. So I don't really know. They need to be buffed. Something has to happen. Either they need a lot more armor so that they can sit there duking close enough, because you got to remember that boarding actions only happen on certain angles, and you have to be very close to be able to board properly. Now they have a heap of extra skills like teleport and blah blah blah, but really the ones that do the damage is the boarding. They have boarding torpedoes, but these can be shot out as well by defense guns on the ships. So they're just very ineffective, very ineffective. I'm yet to win a match with them, to be fair. I'm yet to even see anybody use them effectively. I may have just not been knowing how to play them, but the general consensus from most people on YouTube at the moment is that they're very underwhelming and they need a lot of work. So let's go through the factions that they have. We'll read it first. The Adeptus Astartes. The Space Marines are the foremost defenders of mankind. The Emperor's spear thrust deep into the heart of his foes. These genetically engineered warriors are implacable, unyielding, and know no fear. Adeptus Astartes vessels are expensive and therefore few in number. However, they are swift, mobile, and offer substantial firepower. Space Marines are renowned for dealing ferocious damage during boarding actions or by conducting surgical teleport strikes on critical sections of enemy ships. In addition, the Space Marines training renders them entirely immune to morale effects. So this is what I was saying about them before. I feel like you do get very few ships. They are very expensive, but substantial firepower, I don't think so. I think that they are pretty weak gun compared to some of the others there. I don't think they have that substantial firepower. The Space Marines are renowned for dealing ferocious damage during boarding actions. Yes, they can, but not as much as you would think. I have I mean, they can. If you have a fleet and every one of those fleets all jump into one ship, you will do some damage. But then the cooldown after that, you're left vulnerable for so long, and in order to do that, you've got to be so close to the enemy that you're all of a sudden, you're really close, and your number one weapon has all been blown on one ship. And yeah, you took that one ship out, but now you're about to get rammed by the Imperial Guard, rammed by the Tyranids, teleported away by the Necrons, all teleported in, and then, you know, like AoE buffed to death, or rammed by the Orcs. So they, like, these guys want to ram you, these guys want to ram you, these guys want to ram you. So if you get any one of these guys, your boarding actions are not going to be as effective as they will with, say, any of these guys, to be fair, and you're now getting close, which is exactly what they want, because they're going to ram you, and they're going to take you out, because you're not that strong. So I really feel like they need a buff. Imperial Navy are pretty damn good. They move really slowly. They have, obviously, they're a ramming fleet. These guys, to give you an instance, I was playing Mechanicus, who are very much a ranged bombing fleet. They're like basically grenade throwers. They just throw bombs everywhere. Very ranged. And I threw everything I had, the whole fleet, and I managed to get him even most of his fleet in a stasis and bombed the hell out of him to back and got most of my bombs off. I'd say I probably got 90% of my bombs off on his whole fleet. It was pretty full on. And he came out of it with like quarter health on most of his ships. I didn't manage to destroy too many of them, but he had like a quarter health, which was probably one of the problems I had. And from there, he'd gotten close enough that he was able to use his afterburners and basically ram the hell out of my fleet and take them out from full health to nothing. So they are really, really good, but you've got to get them in close. You've really got to get them in close, and it's all about getting in close and ramming. I'm not really sure if that fits as much as I would have thought with the Imperial Navy. I would have thought they would have been more of a long-range fleet, to be honest with you, just heavy gunpowder. But you know, it still looks good, like it works well, and they are a very good choice. Moving on to the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Adeptus Mechanicus are the guardians of the Imperium, Fading's technology, and the custodians of secrets deemed too dangerous or corrupting for the eyes of lesser men. They are stewards of terrifying mechanical might. The Adeptus Mechanicus fields ships that are very iota as efficient as those of the Imperial Navy, further augmented by the most advanced technology at the Imperium's disposal. Their fleets are often led by Arch Mechanicus, a specialized battleship unique to the Adeptus of Mars. The Adeptus Mechanicus prefer to engage the foe at a distance and make extensive use of Nova Cannon macro batteries. Yeah, so the Nova Cannon batteries are kind of like you're placing bombs down, like we talked about with the disruption bombs and the stasis bombs and that. And they actually use stasis bombs very much to effect. They have a special one called Rad Tempest, which basically creates a AoE in a cone, which does damage over time, like ticks of damage. So using that with stasis bomb and then throwing down your long-range Nova Cannon bombs, you can do a lot of damage. But as I said, they're balanced in that if people do get too close, they don't have the same strength that the Imperial Navy do. They are pretty tanky, but not that tanky. So they're actually really good. I'm going back to the Adeptus Astartes really quickly because I forgot. You've got the Ultramarines, the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels, the Imperial Fists, Iron Hands, Raven Guard, Salamanders, Space Wolves, White Scars. Now, as you can see, as you go through them, it actually doesn't change any of their abilities. I'm really hoping they flesh the Adeptus Astartes out more. I mean, really, you'd want, you know, the Blood Angels are generally considered close quarters fighters, so they would excel. They love close quarters action, so they would excel. They should excel at boarding maybe more than anybody else. The Dark Angels can be, I don't know, aloof. I would have thought them a little bit more gun orientated. Ultramarines should be getting some buffs for doing tactical maneuvers, that sort of stuff. You would think that Imperial Fists, well, Imperial Fists are a defensive chapter more than anything, to my knowledge, of course. If you're a Imperial Fist fanboy, don't have a go at me. They are the best people at breaching and building fortifications. I think it's breaching fortifications. No, building them. So you'd think that their ships should be a lot tougher. They should maybe get some bonuses towards that. I don't know how you do it, but it'd be cool to have that flavor. At the moment, it's really just skins. You get a badge and the color of the ships change. Iron Hands, straightforward. They should have a lot of the weaponry of the Mechanicus, you'd think. It should be very similar to playing a Mechanicus with the Iron Hands. They're probably the closest to the Mechanicus. The Raven Guard, well, I mean, if you love Corax's boys like I do, I'm a big Raven Guard fan, these guys should be the most stealthy. They should be getting bonuses to stealth. They should be getting hit and run tactics. They should play not like the Drukhari, but they should have some flavor of the Drukhari, I think. Should be more stealth mechanic around them, you would think, as that's the Raven Guard flavor and their lore. Salamanders, I don't know how you do Salamanders. I mean, they're a flame chapter. They're the good guys. They're always, you know, they're the nice guys. I mean, they're Prometheum cult. So, don't know how you do that, but it could be interesting. Maybe, I don't know, fire or something. I don't know. Maybe they start more onboard fires or, you know, something like that would be cool. Space Wolves would just be tenacity, I think. And then obviously you got the White Scars. They should really be benefiting from speed. I mean, we know that from their lore, if you followed the lore at all, their particular chapter is all about speed, right down to their ships. They should have the fastest ships, and there should be something reflecting that, I think. So I'm really waiting to see them work on these guys, because they really need some more work, these guys. I mean, bear in mind, this is early beta, so there's a lot more coming. I hope it's coming. Mars, I don't know a lot about Mechanicus of the Mechanicus. So, I mean, you've got Agrippina, you've got Greya. I won't read them all, guys, because we'll be here all day and all night. Lucius, Mars, Metallica, Ryza, and Styges. The Styges. Yeah. Anyway, so there. So let's, so as I said, their unique stuff is range, so 20% extra for Nova Cannons, really, really good. I've played these guys a bit, they are very, very fun. So same, Auger Probe, same, Castellan robots, we all know what the Castellans are. This is Lightning Strike, deals 1 additional troop damage, pretty cool. Same, we've already read that, that's the Nova Cannon. The ship can use maneuver, yep, same. Calixus Assassin, I should say. Lightning Strike inflicts a 500 morale loss in addition to other effects. Applies to the flagship. And this is pretty good. A 500 morale loss is very good. Like, that's almost guaranteed to drop a ship that's had any morale loss at all into a what do you call it? A mutiny, because ships mutiny when their morale gets too low. So that's pretty good. For a ranged class, that's basically on your slowest ship, usually your big flagship. Okay, cool. Let's move into Chaos. So Chaos, again, this one actually does have some changes to it. And you can see that the Mechanicus has some slightly different stuff. No, not the Mechanicus, Chaos. This is the first one that does. So some of them you'll notice there's 9, there's 10. And as we move, although I think it, yeah, see, you go into the Death Guard, Nurgle's boys, and it starts to change a little bit. You've got an Auger Disruption Bomb. These are mostly the same. These are mostly the same. You got a Demonic Infestation. When the ship is destroyed, the enemy ship is identification range suffers 1 to 2 troop damage. So that's a bit different. That's a bit chaosy. You've got some more Demonic Sight, which just increases your macro cannon's accuracy, because it falls off the further you go away from a ship, obviously. We've got Warp Powered upgrade, so when the ship's shield is fully replenished, enemy vessels within 2000 to 2005 unit radius suffer a 50 morale loss. That's pretty cool. Emission Dissipator, that's standard. Helldrake Forge, when performing a boarding action, the critical assault chance is increased by 20%, applies to ships with launch bays. That's pretty cool. So as you can see, we've added some here for them. So you've got Alpha Legion, you've got Red Corsairs, you've got Black Legion, you've got Death Guard, Emperor's Children, Iron Warriors, Lost and the Damned. Not one I'm aware. I've never heard of these guys, but maybe they're made up one for this game. Maybe it's a new chapter. Maybe it's one I just haven't heard of. Let me know in the comments below if you already know this chapter, Lost and the Damned. Night Lords, probably my favorite Chaos faction, I think. They have the most cool lore and most unique lore. They are real assholes. Thousand Suns, yeah, cool. And then Word Bearers, and you've got the World Eaters. So fairly straightforward. What I'll do, guys, is I won't go through, as I said, I won't read everyone. When I go in and I'll try and do one on a couple of these if I can, as we go through the series, and then I'll read them out on their individual. So I'll do one on Chaos, or it might be Chaos and Mechanicus or something. See how we go. We're only 25 minutes, so I don't want to take this too much longer. The Corsairs, so pretty simple. These are your Corsairs. Wild-hearted Eldari Corsairs can be found wherever the galaxy offers adventure and experience to thrill their heightened senses. Reckless and mercurial, they owe no loyalty save for that though they choose to give. Only a fool would trust them without good cause. The Eldari Corsairs fight from highly advanced spacecraft that are lighter and faster than comparable vessels. They're also much more delicate. As such, their vessels rely on extreme speed offered by their solar sails to avoid incoming fire, rather than on the ability of armor to absorb it. This is very true. All three of the Eldar are super, super weak. They do not take much damage. I feel they need more maneuverability than what they have right now, because I don't think they're as maneuverable enough, given some of the special abilities of the other races. For how weak they are, I'm not a fan. I've rarely played them, to be honest with you. I know they can be good. I've seen some people play them very good, but the micromanagement with them is very intense. So you don't want to have too many ships because there's so much micromanagement going on already. This game is very micro-intensive. Even more, I think even a lot more, because of the pace of the game. The pace is so much faster than, say, something like Warhammer Total War 2 or 1 or whatever you like. Any of the Total Wars, they move at a slower pace, so the macro or micro is not as intense. It's still intense, but this game, you've got to, because of turning circles and maneuvering, you've got to be working well ahead. It's kind of like playing chess really fast. I've played some really good players. I've got bum kicked a couple of times, but I've never had anybody really wreck me with these guys. I've had people beat me with Adeptus, the Adeptus Mechanicus plenty of times. I've had somebody beat me with Imperial Guard. Tyranids definitely. Tau, both the Tau are really, really strong. Necron occasionally. Orcs, yes, but very, very rarely have I had these guys beat me. Yeah, anyway. So there, you going through race, you got Yannari, Black Hearts, Broken Sigil, Dying Sun, Flayed Skull, Iron Thorn, Last Hatred, and the Severed. Now, I don't know the backstories for these guys very much. Sorry, going back here. Sky Raiders, Eldritch Raiders, Steel Eye Reavers, Sun Blitz, Twilight Sword, Void Dragon. I think I've heard of Void Dragon, and Yannari. Is it Yannari or Nari? Let me know in the comments below. Same sort of stuff here, not much changes. You've got a Void Predator. The ship is in the glass cloud or asteroid field. Enemy macro weapons suffer 20% accuracy loss. Kin crew batteries while reload stance basically increases it. It's like an escalating reload for you. And this is pretty much the same, and this is the same. So no big dramas there. And none of the sub factions change any of these yet, so they haven't had to work. The Azari are probably the worst of all three, in my opinion. They are super duper delicate. Craft worlds are cosmic lifeboats that the last remaining remnant of a star-flung civilization, all but consumed by its own hubris. Forever teetering on the brink of annihilation, the Asari fight to defend their existence with ancient technology and the power of prophecy. The Azrani fight from swift vessels that favor hit-and-run strategies over sustained engagement, often using the cover of gas fields to shield their approach. Though more heavily armored than other Eldari vessels, Azrani ships are fragile compared to those of other races and demand careful maneuvering to achieve victory. Very, very much. These are the weakest of all three factions, I think. And I played them once and I just went, nah. Now, let me know in the comments below if you've mastered them, or you've done a good, you've done really well with them, or you've been able to win some good matches with them. Please do let me know in the comments below. Give me some tips how you did that. Pretty standard fare, all the same stuff from last one, so I'm not going to go through it too much. Altok, Beltan, Landon, Samhan, I can't even pronounce some of these. Olthwan, Olthway, Oztara. All right, my apologies for butchering the names. We went through the Drukhari. Now these guys are stealth. So there's two tactics to these guys, and I have seen these used the most, I think, out of the three of the Eldar races. They can stealth. As long as they're moving, they build up a field that will keep them stealthed. And you have to get bloody close to them to be able to find them or shoot them. Unless you're... So, I mean, I had a game with them where I was really doing hit and run tactics. So, one of the tactics you can use with them is just keep sending, like, carrier, like, send a lot of, like, bomber squadrons and things like that. And just keep moving away from them and sending bomber squadrons and just keep copying bomber squadrons and you can't find your target. Unfortunately, the guy I went up against, who was very good, was using Tau Protectorate Fleet. Now, the Tau always have some, and these guys need if anything, they probably need a nerf because they're too strong, like way too strong. The Tau, both factions are immensely strong. Basically, they have one of the longest range attacks of any of which is within the lore, guys. So before you start carrying on, the Tau are very good at range and they're terrible at close range. So they do play to the lore correctly. My issue with them is for the amount of firepower they can put out and the range they can do it. So they're really deadly at range and they put a lot of firepower out, but they can maneuver far quicker than other races. Then they should be able to put out that much damage. So like they can turn on a dime far quicker than almost any other ship. Now this might be part of the lore, I'm not sure on that part, so please let me know in comments below if you feel that's the case. However, my feeling on it is, with that much firepower that they can put out so quickly, even their capital ships and their smaller ships, not even their escort ships, they can just turn on a dime too quick. Their axis turn is way too quick, and so trying to get behind them, which is a tactic that is very useful in the game, is trying to get behind them to the engines where they don't have guns to bear on you, is extremely difficult because they move so quick that if you're playing, hell, even if you're playing anything but the Eldari, or even if you're using Necrons who can literally teleport behind them, they turn so quick you can't really take advantage of it. So their enemy is really anything that has enough damage to get in close and ram them. Having said that, they can move pretty fast when they need to. But anyway, we'll keep moving on. So the Eldari are sort of... Now, well, I'll give you an idea. So ramming damage is increased by 50%. Applies to fleet's Drukhari line ships. So they're really fragile. So I've never used this, and I can't imagine you actually using it. It'd be very situational. When a ship is hit by a splinter torpedo, its speed and rotation speeds are reduced to 0 for 5 seconds. Yes, but torpedoes are very hard to land, and can be, have limited uses. So it's not as though you're gonna get a lot of use out of that. The Witch Cult. So critical assault chances of impalers are increased by 10%. So that's pretty cool. That's for, applies to ships with impaler squadron. So that's pretty good. Standard, this just increases your range. While reload stance, again, standard, and then Void Predator. So they're basically, changes here are Shadow Field Overload, fully restores the shadow field of the ship and keeps it at maximum for 10 seconds. Probe is standard. Venom Shard Bomb is a bit different, teleports a bomb to maximum distance of 13.5 units. The bomb explodes after 10 seconds and kills 4 troops on all ships within, So they're kind of, with these guys, they're kind of stealthy, they're hit and run. You kind of do want them to get in close and board because that's kind of the way they work. They're slavers. They want to kind of cripple you and then board you. And they've done a really good job with them in the flavor of the game, but they're just so weak. And when you come up against something like this, it's hard. Like if you're fighting the orcs or you're fighting the Tyranids, they're very slow, and this is where the maneuver feels you can get your advantage. But if you're fighting this, these guys always field like a heap of little support stealth, scout craft. So you're gonna have a really hard time trying to escape these scout craft because you just have to send them around. If you kill them, you got to kill like 10 of them. So that's really hard. And every time you kill one, you're then visible and everybody can see you. The other side of things is with their stealth mechanic, is that as soon as when you're trying to tap a point, and the game so far in the ranked or in this sort of battle is points. So your control points. You got to get those control points. You got to sit there to take it, which means the Drukhari have to actually sit in one place, and they have no. To sit there and take it, they lose all of their stealth ability, and then they have to actually move for a certain amount of time to rebuild that stealth ability, which means later on, stealth is it's useless as a tactic to try and win battles on points. So you might think, okay, so you just outmaneuver the orcs and steal the points around them. Great. Problem being, well, you can with the orcs because they're the slowest moving thing, but problem being is that you have to stop. So if it's not the orcs or the Necrons and they're not at the other side of the map, and the maps aren't that big, it's going to be really tough. So these guys, I feel, are probably the best out of the three, but man, you have to be a good player. You really have to know how to play them, and I haven't yet, to be fair. They do interest me, and I would like to get to know them better, but tough. I think we didn't go over Chaos too much. Chaos, basically, we just went through these just quickly on Chaos. Chaos, from what I can tell so far, very ranged based. They have some heavy guns. Like their master, the ships of the Chaos Fleet were once loyal to the Emperor of Mankind, but the corrupting influence of the Dark Gods has warped them into something fouler and more dangerous. Now imbued with hellish energy, they come to take revenge on the Imperium they once served. The Chaos Fleet offers a wide variety of ships spread across a great range of tonnage, allowing it to muster a force suitable for any engagement. Its vessels favor swiftness and long-range engagement. These guys really are long-range engagement. You do kind of want to let your big guns do the talking for you. I feel like that's probably what we should have had in the Imperial Navy, I would have thought. These guys do it at range 2, but they do it through like grenade launching bombs, is the best way to explain it. These guys do it through just sustained heavy firepower. These guys have pretty good firepower, but you kind of got to be front on to do it. Don't even know. These guys are very stealthy. When they do hit, they can hit well, but you take so much damage as soon as you reveal yourself. Let's move on to the orcs. All right, so the orcs, you've got the orc pirates, you've got the bad moons, you've got the blood axes, the death skulls, the evil sons, and the goths. Not sure I remember about the goths. This might be a newish one. Couple of changes here. Plasma bomb straight up. That's just the probe. This one's cool. War, the critical assault chance of every orc ship on the battlefield is raised by 100% for 30 seconds. So if you get in close and you smash this and then you teleport into your enemy, as in you board them, that's really, really good. Stasis bomb we went through, and then you've got the Nova Cannon shot, which is very much like the Mechanicus Nova Cannon, only it has a really cool sort of RNG. You know, one time it'll be one bomb, the next time it'll be like 4 bombs, and it's randomly placed all over the sort of place. It's pretty cool. Shoots a plasma warhead between 6,000 and 2,500 units for the ship. The shot inflicts 50 to 100 damage to all ships within a 2,000 unit area of the effect radius. The affected ship's armor is considered as 50 and they suffer a 30 morale loss. However, the weapon lacks precision and the area of effects are subject to random dispersion. Very good fun. I do like the orcs. Custom shields increases the shield regeneration. Univer bridge stance can be used even if the deck is destroyed. Super zaps. While in lock-on stance, all zap attacks have 50% chance to bypass the shields and holofields. That's pretty cool. Big red button. Reduces the big red button maneuver cooldown by 10 seconds. Applies to battleships. Some of the feedback I got for this is in the first game, there was literally a big red button as part of the interface. And people were like, I missed the big red button. Why don't you have the big red button? It's lore based. Yeah. So that'd be cool to have that back, I think. Defense turrets deal 0.5 damage per second. Enemy ships with range. Cool. That's fairly standard. Boarding action kills the last troop on board. This is a unique one. If a boarding action kills the last troop on board a ship, the assaulting ship is healed for 10% of all the destroyed ships' remaining hull points. Applies to fleet line ships. So that's pretty cool. Otherwise, pretty dead big guns. So all pretty much the same. Now these guys are the slowest. You got your big orc rock fortresses, and I think they've done a really, really good job. They're really strong. They're just armored hulks, and they can put out huge amounts of damage, but they move super, super slow. So I tend to run them with just 2 or 3 big rocks, and I run in 2v2s and I play the tank. but this tank can put out quite a bit of damage. They take a hell of a hiding, but I think the balance on the orcs is pretty good. They could probably do a little bit less damage with their guns. That's the only, I mean, tiny. I think they're balanced really, really well. And they're great fun to play, and they're really orky, and the sound effects are really cool. They've done a great job with them, I think. As far as, I've only got that one there. Yeah, I haven't opened many. And, oh, by the way, these change, right, because they all have their own. So each sub-faction has their own things, right? So if I go over to, quickly, I didn't show you this before, if I go over here and I go Blood Angels, I've got 2 Blood Angels. If I go Raven Guard here, I've got 3 Raven Guard. I don't think I've got much else. I have unlocked more, but they're a bit bugged at the moment. So anyway, just going back to that. So let's move on to the Necrons now, as we're coming towards the end of the video and I want to get these through. Now the Necrons I really like. They're really fun to play. They have a teleport ability, which means they can, they've got a cooldown and they can teleport behind their enemy, which is really effective. They can teleport behind their enemy and then hit them with AoE effects and hit them in the rear where there's no guns, behind their engines. They can teleport behind the enemy and then focus on the engines, which is a valid tactic for them. I think they have a really good balance. They're not super tanky. They feel sort of a little bit lightweight. They're not as lightweight as these guys, but I would say they're probably the second most lightweight of them. I feel like these guys are actually more tanky than the Necrons, which I don't know if that's correct. I think these guys, they should be a lot more susceptible to taking damage when things get close to them. Than these guys. These guys probably shouldn't be the second most weakest faction. It feels that way. It might not be that way statistically, but it certainly feels that way to me. Especially given that, especially the bigger ships tend to be about getting in close and then doing AoE damage. Like they just do this massive electricity storm. But as soon as you get in close, you've got to really be careful. And the way to get in close more often is to zap in behind them, but then you've got this massive cooldown to try and get away. So they can be fun. They can really be fun. You can pick up some amazing maneuvers with them, but they can be frustrating as well. So let's read the Necrons real quick. Actually, we should have read the Orcs, shouldn't we? Orcs live for the violence of war, for the ceaseless contest to prove themselves the strongest. Once an Orc gets underway, there can be no hope of peace until every last green sin is slaughtered. Even then, they will soon return. Orc ships are rusty, ramshackle, and assembled from whatever parts the mech boy had at hand. Rather than any grand design, nonetheless they are every bit as potent as any ship used by other races. Orcs offer little threat at long range, but are festooned with heavy guns and grow increasingly dangerous as they close the distance. Moreover, the big red button offers the prospect of heavy ramming damage to anyone foolish enough to be caught in their path. And I think that really accurately displays them, so that's pretty cool. Getting on the Necrons. The ageless masters of the galaxy, the Necrons emerge from stasis tombs to reclaim worlds lost to the ravages of time and the encroachment of lesser races. Coldly regal and slow to acknowledge outsiders as beings worthy of survival, the Necrons will sweep aside all in their path in their quest to restore lost glories. The Necron warships are costly and often outnumbered. However, their living metal hulls are heavily armored and capable of regenerating damage, even in the heart of battle. Mastery of Gorse technology leads their weaponry extreme precision, allowing the Necrons to inflict crippling damage on an unprepared foe. Yes and no. Again, they say they're well armored. I feel like they're not as well armored, but then again, I haven't used them. They have some abilities where they've got, and there's some special stuff here. Pyramidal reconstruction instantly cancels light critical and heavy critical effects on allied Necron ships with 9,000 units around the ship. So that's pretty good. If you've got fires or things like that, you can put them out straight away. Transdimensional Thunderbolt launches an energy orb that hits all ships on its trajectory, inflicting 200 damage, ignoring shields, polyfields, and armor. Probe, Santed. Resurrection Orb. Resurrection Orb resurrects one troop on Necron ships in light or heavy casualty. Steps and all drifting hulks. So that's not too bad. An ally drifting hulks, I should say. Resurrects troops, act as a troop shield. Stasis Bomb, standard. And then they've got this one, Scarab Swarm. Enemies within 4,500 units around the ship suffer 10 damage per second, ignoring armor. All Necron ships within the same radius regain 2 hull points per second. Limited value. Because of the game speed in this game, it is quite fast. If you look at the speed of it compared to Total War, it's very fast. I keep saying when I was streaming it, you take your eyes, if you say you run, you more often than not, you'll split your forces into two. Something light and quick to go and attack points, and your bigger army to take on your foes. Now there's many of other, you can keep them all together, you can do all sorts of bits and pieces, but my feeling is that very often, if you just take your eyes off just for a second, because you're micromanaging like crazy on on your main fleet to try and keep them alive, your little fleet gets wiped out by like one ship because you didn't micro them. And so they're not automatically, they're automatically firing, but they're not automatically microing themselves to get on the best angles and vectors. So quite often they'll get wasted, but even sometimes inferior because you're so busy just trying to handle all the micro that's going on in 4 or 5 ships in your main group. It can be really tough, and more often than not, you'll lose ships simply because you weren't quick enough to micro them, more than whether or not you had bad gameplay. Whether or not you knew how to micro them and what to do, it was one thing. Microing them that quickly, that you can sort of keep them all within different firing arcs and moving in different ways, I find myself anyway, that is the hardest part of the game. The speed at which it goes. Now, when you first start the game off and you think, wow, they're moving really slowly, and you're thinking, well, this is a really slow moving game. But as soon as you get into battle, even though they're moving slowly and they're turning slowly, things seem to happen so quickly that you're outpaced by the game really quick. So, this is a game, unfortunately sometimes, that is going to favor you more than anybody, at least in the 1v1 against humans, who can micro really quickly. So I think it's going to be one of those games where you need to master the select race and know instinctively what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. Is it good or bad? I'll leave that up to you guys to discuss and think about, and let me know what you think in the comments below. I don't know how you would slow the battle down, to be honest with you, because sometimes it feels like it's too slow, and then other times it feels like it's wickedly fast. But we're all new at the game at this point, so that'll come with time as well, I suppose. Anyway, moving on. We'll go and check their abilities down the bottom. Living metal structure. Escort ships do not suffer additional damage from area damage. Nightmare Shroud. While in the reload stance, the ship inflicts 3 moral loss per second to every enemy ship within identification range. Residual absorption. While the ship is located in a glass cloud, the hull cauterization effect provides 1 additional hull point per second. Applies to all fleet ships. And you're thinking, wow, that could be really popular. You could make like a regeneration sort of build for your ships. There are some maps that have no gas clouds, 0. So if you take that, there's a 50-50 chance maybe that you'll get a gas cloud. And while you're sitting in that said gas cloud, you're not capping points. So if you're just sitting in a gas cloud and not capping points, your opponent's gonna win. So it kind of nulls the effect of it a little bit. I'm hoping that with the second rollout of the betas, there'll be other multiplayer modes other than just holding points. That's all we've got at the moment. So some of these abilities don't really lend themselves to that. So I think there's going to be other kinds of multiplayer, which should be lots of fun, hopefully. I don't know. Just all-out battles would be better rather than holding the points. Destroy the enemy fleet. Make it take 50% of casualties to withdraw, or whatever. I don't know. I'm sure they've got other modes coming, and we're just getting the styles for now. But for so far, this is my feedback. Let's go into Tyranids. So Tyranids, you've got Behemoth, Gorgon, Jormungandr. I don't really know about that one. Kraken, we all know Kraken. Leviathan, we all know Leviathan. Hydra, Ouroboros. I can't remember that one, but yeah. Tiamat, which I think is an old one. Okay, so let's look at the Tyranids. Tyranids exist only to feed, to reduce the living matter into thick, nutrient-rich gruel, to sustain the Hive Fleet in its nomadic voyage. Across the stars, there is no common cause to be struck, no negotiation to be attempted. You either fight the Great Devourer until you can fight no more, or you yield to its hunger. Ugh. Tyranids' bioships are numerous, fast, and expendable. Few individual vessels pose a substantial threat, but when arrayed in overwhelming numbers, they are almost impossible to defeat. Through conventional tactics, Tyranid vessels are at their most dangerous at close range, where they can devour enemy ships whole. The foe's only hope is to take advantage of their weak armor as they close, because once the feeding begins, nothing can stop. Now, I have played someone who I was using Chaos actually, and I was trying to keep a distance, and he managed to get close enough. And I kid you not, my hulls were almost completely intact. That I'd taken very little damage. My shields might have been down, but like my hulls got down. So he got my shields down, and then he went after the crew. He wasn't necessarily trying to damage my ships, he was trying to take the crew. And before I knew it, I didn't even realize what was going on. I had 5 drifting hulks with no crew. Very little damage, but no crew. And like all I could do was sit there and watch all 5 of my hulks just slowly wither and explode. Nothing I could do. So there's some pretty cool tactics with them. You really want to get in close. You really want to start feeding on them. That's what they're about. Some people are saying, like this is said, that instead of going a couple of big ships, which are much easier to micro because there's less of them, you go for a lot of little ships. However, I feel like they get shot to pieces, the little ones, before they get any chance to really do any damage. They do have some stealth tactics with them, so that's something to think about as well. These, I don't think the balancing's wrong. I think I just don't know how to play them yet. Please do let me in the comments below if you know some good tactics. We'll look through some of their bits and pieces. To me, they really feel like in close and damaging. So you got Void Lurker, allows the Tyranid high ship to reorient itself and warp to the designated location with a 9,000 unit radius. Once activated, the Tyranid ship disappears for 2.5 seconds and reappears at the closest valid location, the target area. A Massive Claw is used. If Massive Claw is used within the next 5 seconds, damage is increased by 10%. So pretty cool. Spiky Carapace, when activated, it spreads needles and broadsides, inflicting 100 damage through shields to the closest enemy ships within 4,500 meter radius. Needles don't go through the ships. Cool. Wrecking Ball. This is basically a Wrecking Ball. Recco Biomorph Ball. Tyranid hive ship spits a tongue out in a straight line from the prow. It's basically, it goes for about 3 or 4 inches and it just spits out a big wrecking ball. And it basically hits other ships. This one's pretty standard. Psychic Scream, enemy ships within a radius around the ship suffer 400 morale loss. That's pretty effective. Spore Fields. Now this one's very cool. Because they move so slow, you can launch this. It's like a probe. You launch it. If it hits a ship, it explodes and they take like AoE damage and damage over time. It does a tick. You can actually set it onto a control point and it'll sit there for 2 minutes, and any ship in that control point will then take damage. So it's really good if, with the Tyranids, if you use this one, and you can actually combine it with Spore Fields created by the Spore Explosion command, get a scanning range of 9,000 units, which is very, very cool, because then you can start using them to put them on all the points, so you always know where your enemies are. There's some pretty cool tactics you can do with these guys. I've seen them used really well. Acid Blood, as long as the ship has less than 50% of its hull points remaining, it leaves a trail that deals 25 damage per second to enemy ships. Really good if they're trying to get behind you to take you out. Standard. Pro Acid Weapons critical chance increased by 50%. That's pretty cool. Lictor Brood. The ship gets the Lictor infiltration skill, which acts as a lightning strike. Lictors infiltrate the ships, launching assault action. Basically, it's a hardcore. It's like almost like the Space Marines assault, which is really, really cool. Accelerated regeneration increases light critical damage regeneration speed by 50%, which you do need. Now, I don't know what the top end of this is like, and I'm really interested to see. But we'll keep moving on because the video is starting to get long, and all I've really done is sit here and explain it. So I hope it's not too boring, guys. So you've got 2 Tau fleets, which I think was a fairly odd choice. You've got the Tau Merchant Fleet, and then you've got the Tau Protectorate Fleet, and I'll go through both. The Tau Protectorate Fleet, known as the Kor or Vash in the Tau language, was a purposed extension and overhaul of the Tau Empire's merchant fleet. As the Tau Empire expanded, the increasing scope and scale of threats to the greater good demanded that dedicated warships be created, lest the Tau be overwhelmed and their noble conquests swallowed by selfish aliens. The protection fleet is composed of well-equipped, highly efficient ships capable of devastating long-range engagements. Hell yes, they are. However, they're relatively fragile and lack of speed makes these ships vulnerable to swifter, more resilient foes. So as I said, the swifter, more resilient, swifter, maybe not more resilient foes are a good counter. However, you got a lot of slow moving foes that take a pounding from these guys. Probably the only one who can duke it out with range that I can think of. Potentially Mechanicus and Chaos. I agree with all of it, except for their maneuvering on the spot. They're actually able to just sit and turn really, really quickly, which probably just needs to come down a bit and maybe a little bit of their damage. So I won't, I'm going to butcher these guys. Sia, Daleth, Diano, Farsight Enclave, Tao, and Tuan. Ah, man, I got these all wrong, I'm sure. Please let me know in the comments below how bad I got them. Some fun ones here is a supercharged voyage steel, pretty straightforward. Experimental ray gun is lots of fun. Shoots a projectile that hits all ships on its trajectory up to a distance of 25,000 units and inflicts 100 damage, ignoring shields, holofields, and armor. This thing is brutal. Pretty standard as far as these go. Navigation shields, seeking turrets, same sort of stuff, same stuff. Targeting coordination, so applies to Tau escort ships. While in lock-on stance, every friendly Tau ship within the ship identification range has the accuracy of its railguns enhanced to exceptional accuracy. That can be very useful. Strobe field, enemy accuracy reduced by 50% when the ship is using either the all-ahead full or high-energy turn maneuvers, applies to line ships. And then emission dissipation, which is just like you can move around a bit. Let's go to the last one here and we'll finish up. Tau Merchant Fleet. In the early days of their spaceborne expansion, the Tau made little distinction between trade and conquest, for both offered opportunity. Their heavily armed and armored trading vessels serving them well in early conflicts, blazing a trail of expansion that has never since gutted. The Tau Merchant Fleet is composed of very few slow, well-equipped vessels. Each is equally capable of destroying the foe at a variety of ranges, relying on their formidable shields to keep the vessels intact while barrage of ordnance and torpedoes reduce the enemy to ruin. These guys are a little bit weaker for close range stuff, but I think their firepower's a little bit better. These guys are a little bit stronger. Firepower's not quite as good. I prefer to play these guys most of the time, but these guys are very good too. Nothing really changes here. They're pretty much the same both ways. So far. So guys, that's the races outlaid. The sub-factions, the skills so far. Again, we've got some top ones at the end now. I haven't had a chance to unlock it and probably won't at the end of this beta because I think it ends tomorrow. But we will continue this once the new beta hits early January, and I'll keep going with it and we'll go through them more. I will try to get out a couple of these before the beta hits and go into more depth with each individual one, and we'll do some 1v1. That's it for this video. It's 57 minutes long. As always, guys, if you've liked what you've seen, I know this was a bit of an explanation video, so if you didn't make it to the end, I understand, but if you have and you're enjoying this, please drop a like. If you didn't like it, then thumbs down, but give me some feedback in the comments below. That'd be great. Otherwise, it really helps if you'd hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on BitChute, it's above the right hand side. If you're watching on YouTube, it's down the right, below the right hand side of the screen. You can catch us on Twitch at twitch.tv/DogShadowGaming for our streaming and action. If you want to know when we're streaming, when we're going, then I suggest you jumping on board and getting involved, or following us on Instagram at DogShadowGaming, Twitter at DogShadowGameIN1, and mine's at DogShadowGaming. You can catch us on Facebook at DogShadowGaming as well, where we upload videos, and I also let you know when I'm going on live for Twitch on there. YouTube at DogShadowGaming for all videos like this one. And BitChute as just an alternate. I know some people use YouTube, some people like BitChute, so I've started on BitChute as well. It's a very new channel there, but if you are watching on that, then please do drop a like and subscribe, and I'll keep going on that platform. Alright guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you on the next episode of Dog Shadow Gaming. See you guys, bye.